Hello, welcome to the France24 interview. I'm François Picard. In an age where the internet, where 24-hour news channels like our own are revolutionizing the way we follow the big stories of our day, we're going to take a look back at what was arguably perhaps the biggest news day of the last century. We're talking about D-Day, June the 6th, 1944, the Allied landing in Normandy. And we're talking about it with one of the men who helped bring it to life, John Morris. Welcome to the France24 interview. John, you were photo editor for Life magazine at the time, and you had under your command, if it were, as it were, 6 men, including the famous Robert Capa, who took those first pictures at Omaha Beach. There's a photo in your book, Robert Capa, D-Day, which is a very nice book, a bilingual edition here by Point de Vue Press. In the book, you see a picture of the 6 of you all together. 6 people to cover the Allied landing. By today's standards, that seems huge, but then you got to remember it was 80 kilometers of coastline they were invading.
That's right, and there was more than one beach. There was a beach where the British and Canadians landed. The Americans had 2 beaches. Omaha Beach was the code name for one, and Utah Beach was the code name for the other. They were both, Utah was further toward Cherbourg on the Cotentin Peninsula. But there was fighting there, but the great fighting has been shown on, and for example, it was recreated for Steven Spielberg's great film called Saving Private Ryan. It was on Omaha Beach, where there are thousands and thousands of casualties. It was very rough indeed, and so that was one of the most crucial.
And Robert Capa was actually in the first wave.
Robert Capa, who had to live up to his reputation as a great war photographer, which went back to the Spanish Civil War, was expected to land in the first wave, and indeed he did. He was the only press photographer who landed in the first wave on Omaha Beach. Bob Landry of Life landed on Utah Beach, but unfortunately all the film, both Landry's and newsreel people, their film was all lost when a courier dropped it in the English Channel on the way back to England. But
so there's no images of the very first landing at Utah Beach.
Not Utah Beach. Yeah.
You've brought there. I see a picture of one of the ones that Robert Capa took.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah, tell us about it.
Well, this is perhaps the most memorable of the 11 frames that we saved from Robert Capa's 4 rolls of film on the landing on Omaha Beach. I didn't get this film until Wednesday night. D-Day had been early Tuesday morning, and I was anxiously waiting in London all that time. Finally, a courier came with a packet of film from Capa and a message saying, "John, all the action is in the 4 rolls of 35 millimeter." We were under terrible deadline pressure because the whole world was waiting for pictures. In addition to
because they have what was called a pool situation where you were providing pictures for everyone else.
We were in a pool with the 3 major wire services: Associated Press, United Press, and International. And they all had representatives in London, and they were as anxious as I was, if perhaps more so.
So from Tuesday afternoon to Wednesday night, you wait around the clock.
Right.
You get the film developed, which takes a little while, and then you have to pass it by the censors.
Yeah, exactly. The only picture that the world has seen up until that time was taken Tuesday night around midnight by an Acme photographer working for UP, Bert Brandt, who had just barely gotten his feet wet and gone immediately back to England, but it wasn't much of a picture. I can't even tell you what it looks like today. But Capa had the reputation, and he was stuck with it. So,
did he ever tell you afterwards about what it was like during that landing compared? You say, I mean, we know of his pictures from the Spanish Civil War, but this is something that...
He wrote a whole book about it called Slightly Out of Focus, because when Life published his story, the caption writer said the pictures were slightly out of focus because they were blurry. They weren't so much out of focus as that he was shooting in very poor light conditions. The weather was terrible. It was a wonder that we got any pictures at all. But when the film came in, I told I had a darkroom staff in London.
Which waited around the clock for those pictures.
Yeah, we'd been waiting ever since Tuesday morning. I had Larry Burroughs, who later became a very famous war photographer in Vietnam for life, was one of the darkroom crew that night. And anyway, so when that packet of film came, I said, I've got to have contact prints. I had to edit from a contact sheet. And so as fast as possible. A few minutes later, and a darkroom lad came running to my office saying, "John, the films are all ruined." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "You were in such a hurry. I put them in the cabinet to dry, hung them in the cabinet, and closed the doors, and there was too much heat, and the emulsion ran." I said, "Oh my God." I ran back to the darkroom with him. And on the first 3 rolls I looked at, there was nothing. It was just pea soup. But on the 4th roll, there were 11 frames, and we printed every single one of them. They're all in that book you just showed.
You then later went yourself to Normandy a month later and covered the rest of the war. When you think back at it, how tough an assignment was it?
Well, I was not a photographer. I was a picture editor. In the sense, I was the photographer's boss, but they didn't think of me as a boss. They thought of me as a colleague, which was fine with me.
And when you were going in, it's a different context from today. When there are wars, we've seen recent conflicts, for instance, Iraq, even today's conflict in Libya. There's the international opinion, national opinion is divided. Here, everyone was squarely against the Nazis. Was there this feeling? What was the relationship like between the journalists on the one hand and the military on the other?
There were about 1,000 accredited correspondents doing one thing or another. I mean, everything from technicians in couriers to the stars, like Edward R. Murrow was the star, the American radio person. We were propagandists for victory. We wanted to win. We wanted to.
And you felt comfortable with that?
We felt comfortable. We were glad to submit to censorship. It was a headache to do it, but we submitted to that easily. Today we're fighting censorship, and circumstances are different. Opinion is more divided about things like the situation in the Middle East, about the invasion of Iraq, which I personally opposed. I think it was one of the great mistakes of modern history to invade Iraq.
And the job of photojournalist, when we look, for instance, the recent killing of Tim Hetherington and Chris Hondros, two great photojournalists in Libya, right. Is it more dangerous as it was, less dangerous as when you were fighting them?
Unfortunately, it's gotten more dangerous for correspondents and reporters. The journalists, working journalists, have become targets. In my day, journalists thought they were immune from combat, and that they thought they could be treated like medical personnel. You know, they would carry signs saying "press." Not that we did in Normandy, but anyway. But now journalists are singled out and often shot purposely.
And they have less backup staff as they did in those days.
Well, I'm not sure about that.
One final question for you, John Morris. You mentioned the having to pass things past the censors and all that, but you also say that the job of a photojournalist is to tell the truth.
Right.
Today,
right.
with digital photography, Is it easier to fudge the truth than it was then, or is it the same?
It's easier, in some ways it's easier to get the truth today because there are civilian people, ordinary people throughout the world have cameras now. Everybody's going around shooting pictures. You know, they have no quality and they're not professional pictures. And there's more need for good picture editors today than there ever was. But the story does get out. It leaks out in various ways today, and that's, to me, that's a healthy sign. So I look forward. What is disturbing to me is the problems of print media. I'm a print person. I've worked on television, but Life. This was, by the way, this was the D-Day issue of Life. This cover of General Eisenhower had gone to press on the Saturday before D-Day, which was Tuesday, because the cover had to do, it took 10 days to print the covers. But the inside story, which is what we produced, and these pictures, this is Capa's pictures. And that was the lead story, and that was what I was sent to London to do. I arrived in London 9 months ahead of time.
So today, time is not necessarily on the side of those trying to get the story out. I want to thank you, John Morris, for being with us, and thank you for being with us here for the France 24 interview.